I read classic literature. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be doing another romance reader tries a new genre video, but for this video, I chose classic literature. There was a period in my life in November where I didn't want to be too emotionally invested in stories, but I also knew that I needed to read something and I need to listen to something in the background noise to take my mind off of things. So I thought classic literature would be a great genre since it's something that I feel like I wouldn't be too emotionally attached to, and it didn't have that much angst, and I also thought that the writing would be dry enough for me to listen to it, appreciate the story, and then leave fully entertained but not being emotionally invested into it, because I just didn't have enough emotions to spread around in November. So I chose classic literature. I read 5 books, I believe, and I'm excited to talk about them. So for the first book that I want to talk about is actually a book that was discussed by Emmy Reads here on BookTube. She is a quickly growing booktuber that is promoting a lot of literature and classic literature reads. She does a really great job at explaining like the behind the scenes, like the metaphors, the similes, the analogies, like everything basically that an English teacher would probably teach you in high school, and you would never think of like what she thinks when she goes into her deep analysis of the book. So she read The Turning of the Screw by Henry James, and she read it for 2 reading vlogs, and I was absolutely captivated by her explaining the story and also explaining the symbolism behind it, the metaphors behind it, that I was actually convinced to read it, and I'm very happy that I did because I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This book follows a woman who is taking a job as a governess, and she is in the care of 2 children. So she's taking care of these 2 children, and in this big mansion, she sees things and she hears things, and she believes that there is a ghostly presence in the house. So if you are a fan of horror novels or thriller novels, definitely pick this one up. It's a fairly short audiobook and a fairly short book in itself that you can quickly fly through. There were a lot of scenes where I was really scared a lot of the times because I wasn't sure if it was the governess's mind that were playing tricks on her, or it was actually the story of like a ghost haunting the mansion. And I really enjoyed these thriller and horror elements to it, that it actually convinced me that maybe I do like gothic literature, and maybe that I do want to invest more time into reading more classics in the future that has these scary and spooky elements to it. And I really quite enjoyed it, but obviously this is not like a very deep analysis of the story and the symbolism. I mean, The Turning of the Screw has a lot of symbolism towards like your positioning turning, like physically turning, the stairs turning, the whole house, the mindset of every character. Like Emmy said in her reading vlog, the governess might think at the beginning that the children were angels. They are not capable of causing any harm, and they are a delight to the world. But then towards the middle of the end of the book, you can start to see that the governess's position in how she thinks about the children is actually turning. And I would highly recommend you to check out Emmy's reading vlogs for a deeper analysis of The Turning of the Screw. It was magnificent. Highly recommend it. So the next piece of classic literature that I read is in the theme of the holiday theme. And I think by saying this, I think a lot of people already know what I read, which is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And I took forever to read this book. I don't know why. I mean, it's like a classic literature that like everybody kind of knows the story of, because lots of TV shows have adapted on this classic literature, and then we just kind of have an idea of it. Also, I think there was like this famous Charles Dickens like A Christmas Carol cartoon movie that like premiered in the 1990s, but for me, I never watched it, but I have read and watched like a lot of adaptations of A Christmas Carol, so I already know the general theme, which is we have a man who is very down, and he is very aggressive when it comes to earning money and to saving money, and he is known as like the Scrooge, and he does not believe in Christmas. He does not believe in helping out others. So on Christmas Eve, he actually meets 3 ghosts, which is like the ghost of the past, the ghost of the present, and the ghost of the future. And then they bring him on this journey where he is learning more about what he is doing wrong, what he did wrong, and what could happen in the future if he continued down this path. And it's a very interesting and really fun story to read. It's very short, so you can get through it very quickly, and it brings you into the holiday spirits. The whole point of this Charles Dickens A Christmas Carol story was actually written during the time when London or England was very poor, and Charles Dickens wanted to bring up the Christmas spirits so that, you know, everybody could go back into the merry ways of celebrating this holiday that was a tradition for them. Lots of people didn't want to celebrate anymore, so this was served as a purpose of raising Christmas cheer and cheering everyone on. I think it's a delightful tale that I think everybody should try to read at least once in their lifetime, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. So the next piece of classic literature is actually children's classic literature. So I did a fair share of adult classic literature and also children's, because I wanted to see like how different could they be. And I actually really like children's classic literature too as well. It kind of reads like young adult, or it kind of reads kind of like adult fiction. So the reading level is easy, but it's not that easy. The one that I read was actually another recommendation from Emmy Reads. She's doing another reading vlog on this book that she read back in elementary school, where her teacher read it to her, and then now she's reading it again. It's called A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and this one is a book that I actually watched a movie of in elementary school. So instead of having a teacher read it to me, I watched a movie. And at first, when I was watching the movie, I was like kind of like confused, because like there was a lot of things going on, and obviously in school settings I was bored, so I didn't really know the idea of the story, but it sounded so familiar as I was listening to the audiobook of this book. So A Little Princess is basically about this child who was born into this like wealthy family. Like her mother passed away, so she only has a father, and her father loves her, and her father cherishes her, gives her everything that she needs. Her father is a businessman who invests in like different sorts of businesses and has since earned a lot of money. So he enrolls her into this very prestigious, like kind of like all girls school, where she is being treated like a princess because she looks like a princess. You know, she's beautiful, she's cute, she's lovely, she's sweet, she has a great personality, and she has a lot of money. So everybody wants to get on her good side so that her father can keep investing in her and also keep investing in the school, and also so that, like, you know, the headmistress and the school can benefit from the profits of this family. And during her journey there, she meets a lot of different girls with a lot of different personalities. She meets and befriends with the servants of the household that may not be treated as nicely as the girls who are actually enrolled in the school. And then a tragedy does strike, where our main character has to go through this very torturous and horrible amount of time at the school, because her father has been acknowledged that he has passed away, and that the investments that he made in the businesses have failed, and that now she's no longer rich, and she actually is coming from a very poor background. So there is a time where she is actually becoming the servant in the household, and where everybody kind of turns their backs on her and doesn't want to be friends with her anymore because they only liked her for her money. When I was reading this book, I absolutely felt gutted. Like, I felt emotionally drained from it because I wasn't expecting it. It was very depressing to read about this really sweet and genuinely nice girl who wants to protect the feelings of her friends, and who wants to help out her friends to the point that she would lie about her own emotions. Instead of saying that she was, you know, hungry, or instead of saying that she was really sad about her situation, or that she misses her father, she would tell her friend, who is also another servant who has it much worse, and say that, you know, I'm not sad, I'm not that hungry, you can eat my bread, and, you know, like, everything's gonna be okay in the end. We can always pretend that, like, everything is better, and that, you know, we are following this journey in the story. Obviously, when you reach to the point where she has that mental breakdown, where she has to admit her own emotions and her feelings, that's when it's more gutted and more emotional. So I really enjoyed the story, and obviously if you guys have watched the movie, then you guys know what I'm talking about. Definitely go check out this book through audiobook, or definitely check it out on the movies, because it's such a cute and amazing story. So the next piece of classic literature that I read is actually a Sherlock Holmes story. So this is A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. So if you guys are new to my channel, I never really talked about it on my channel anyways, but I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes. Robert Downey Jr. will forever be my Sherlock Holmes. And I've said this once and I say it again, it's just like Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law It's just amazing. It was a masterpiece. I really liked the first and the second movie. I think I like the second movie a lot better than the first, but as I keep watching Sherlock #1, I grew more and more interested in the story. When I rewatched it this year again, I thought that Sherlock was kind of boring and a little bit dry, but I'm sure if I watched it again and I watched Sherlock 2, then I would enjoy it. Benedict Cumberbatch with BBC series Sherlock was also a very great adaptation. I liked it. I really enjoyed it, but Robert Downey Jr. forever my #1. BBC series, pretty good too, but I just never finished it because I think it just got too drawn out and it was just too much for me at some point. But going back to A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, this one is a very popular piece, obviously, because everybody knows Sherlock Holmes and everybody knows, like, you know, what he is. And he's basically a crime-solving detective who is really good at investigating and solving crimes and who, like, deduces things very, like, quickly. Almost to the point that it's unnatural. Like maybe he'll like look at a certain clue and then he could link it to another pieces to another pieces to another pieces, and you're just shocked by his brilliant deduction skills and you're shocked by his intelligence and everything like that. I've tried reading A Study in Scarlet a few years back when I really liked Sherlock and I wanted to read the piece of literature. Unfortunately, it didn't go too well because the writing was just a little bit too slow for me. You know, back then I was a little bit younger, so maybe I never had the attention span that I had, and I just never really had the patience to go through a heavy piece of literature like that. So I actually listened to the audiobook for this time around. I enjoyed the audiobook. Sometimes it was hard to follow along the story, and then, you know, like there was a lot of parts of the story where it kind of took me aback because I was like, I'd never seen this in the adaptations, obviously saying that adaptations are never like a clear copy and paste view of like the piece of literature, but there was a lot of parts that shocked me because I never read it before, and it did invoke a lot of emotions in me because those scenes were quite described as very gruesome and very like hard to read sometimes. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars because I found the story a little bit hard to follow sometimes. It kind of jumped all over the places and the great reveal was kind of like mellowed out at the end. So 3 out of 5 stars for me. So the last book that I want to talk about is a Penguin classic. It's a piece of literature that was actually recommended to me from Bree Hill here on BookTube. So she used to be a booktuber, but then she decided to take a step back and to leave BookTube for quite a time. But I really liked Bree, and Bree is an excellent booktuber. And during the time of Black Lives Matter movement, she actually made a video where she talked about, you know, Black literature and Black authors, and she recommended this classic novel that kind of shocked me because I never knew that she read classics. I just always assumed that she just read romance and maybe like fiction stories, but she read this classic literature and she recommended it in a video where it was filled with like romance and fiction stories. So it automatically appealed to me because I also didn't really understand the concept of it until I went to Bree and I asked her, like, can you explain more about this? And then she did. And it's just something that was so new to me that it made me automatically want to read it. So this book is called Passing by Nella Narson. And this book is basically about a woman who is mixed race. She is half Black. She is also half white, but her skin tone is a little bit more whiter. It's lighter than others. So she could technically pass as that she is a white person. And during that period of time where there was a lot of racism, social classes were not so accepting of different races yet. And also people are not accepting that, you know, Black people have their rights and have their freedom. During that time, it's very difficult. So this woman actually lied to her fiance/husband and said that she is actually white, and then she started a family with them. She has basically cut off ties with everybody that associated her as a Black woman until one day she bumps into her 2 friends and they realize quickly that, you know, our main character is passing, and now they are having their own emotions towards it, obviously, because you can imagine it being a very awkward situation and also very difficult situation when you realize that your friend is not proud to be the other half of her, and that is basically lying to society and also trying to be accepted into society by ignoring this part of her. And it was very interesting. This story is definitely something that resonates with a lot of people because it talks about a lot of issues that are so important for us to understand and for us to change for the better in the future and things like that. So rating this book is weird because it's half like nonfiction and half fiction. And then the other half is like, I want to rate it based on my enjoyment level of the story. So for the other half of where I'm actually learning things, there's historical facts, there's a lot of like resonation that hit with me because, this stuff did happen. This stuff is like kind of happening right now. I will give it like a 4 to 5 out of 5 stars because it did a great job at explaining things. It educated me and I learned a lot from it. The other half is like, did I enjoy the story? Was the narrator good at reading it? Was it moving at a pace that I wanted it to move? And that I would have to give a rating of 3 out of 5 stars because the story just moved a little bit too slow for me. But with that being said, how do you really rate it? So that's how I'm going to rate it. 5 out of 5 stars for the point of me being educated and me learning more about this. And then 3 out of 5 stars for the enjoyment of the story. But that is it for all the pieces of classic literature that I have read. I do have a lot that I'm in the middle of reading right now. I was very pleased with the books I chose. I was very pleased with the turnout. But let me know down in the comments which pieces of classic literature that you like the most. I'm sure a lot of people are going to comment Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Persuasion, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, like all these different authors and different titles. But let me know. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.